Hi, I'm Andy Schmuckler, doing a series about the various factors I think um, contributed to our coming to this unthinkable place where that we see in our uh, what it is that controls the American government right now. It is something that was unthinkable enough that the question of how did we get here really needs to be asked. And I think that the answer is that there are a variety of aspects of our whole civilizational system that work together to get us to this unthinkable place where the lie defeats the truth, where something very destructive has been able to take control. And I think it's important to understand it because this crisis is a product of the civilization as a whole, and it's going to have to be the civilization as a whole that gets us on the right path to correcting against the vulnerabilities and the brokenness that this history has displayed. And this particular tape will deal somewhat briefly, I think, but not too superficially, I hope, with the issue of our corporate system. I've written two books about the market economy. The market economy is a wonderful tool, but it also has a dynamic of its own. And part of my life's work has been to say that you got to look at how the system has a logic of its own, and that the outcome is dictated by the system to a very important extent in a variety of systems. Civilization as a whole, which is what that book is about, the system to which we stepped when we took the unprecedented step into the path of civilization, inventing our own way of life. Nobody had ever done that. That created a system that had not existed before, a system with a dynamic that determined a lot of the outcome. So it's one of my frustrations in life that I find that very few people think in terms of systemic dynamics when they're so important. Anyway, my book, The Illusion of Choice, talks about the market system, a different kind of system, but it operates in some ways parallel with the problem that book is about, which has got to do with the war of all against all in the intersocietal system. That dynamic produces outcomes that are really not what we would have chosen. That's what that's about. But the market economy also produces outcomes that we wouldn't have chosen. But the system has to be understood in its own way, which is what the illusion of choice tries to do. One of the things that we witness, we can witness that the corporate system in today's America, and looking at how we got to here, the overall picture, I believe, is that the corporate system has actually abetted the ascent of this fascistic force. I don't think that the corporate system has necessarily the corporate system has contributed to this outcome in at least two ways. One way is that it produced people like the Koch brothers and a whole fascist nut of powerful people whose drive for wealth was of pathological intensity. I mean, when your whole purpose in life is getting more money and you already got more than you and your descendants could possibly spend, something amiss. But something like that arose in the corporate world and gave us, for example, a fossil fuel industry that blocked our doing what we needed to do. picture of the climate challenge became clear a long time ago. I mean, Rio was in 1992. I mean, I didn't consider that to be the beginning of our knowing that we had some important crisis that we needed to do something about. That was understood. The corporate world produced an industry, the fossil fuel industry, that could buy a Republican, a political party, and deceive enough Americans about it being a hoax or whatever, that it was politically viable to play that destructive role of, so that the Koch brothers and their greedy ilk could get more money when they're already the most fabulous industry in the world. All that they were willing to sacrifice, and the corporate world gave us people who are willing to sell out our children and grandchildren to keep their short-term profits as high as they could. But I think it wasn't just the individuals. There was also an ethic that developed. And there's some reason to believe that compared with, say, the 1950s, the corporate world moved more and more in the direction of all we got to, our only responsibility is to make profit for our shareholders. So if we can identify a couple of problems that come out of the corporate world, how can you set up an economy where an industry, when it discovers that you got to choose between killing people and making less money, and how do you set up one where the industry will have enough moral character that it doesn't kill people for money? It turns out that every time an industry has faced that challenge, kill for money or resist the temptation to go for the money in order not to kill people, every time the industry has chosen to kill for money. The asbestos industry has been proven again and again and again to have knowingly withheld what they understood to be the case that was killing their workers. And the tobacco industry willingly chose to sow doubt where there was no doubt, which is the same thing they do with climate change. But they say that the fossil fuel industry looked at how the tobacco industry managed to sow doubt where there was no doubt and to block effective action. Killing for money, all three of those industries. And a friend of mine who's really involved in this kind of stuff, I asked him, is there an industry that when they faced that, voluntarily told the world what they knew that the world needed to know so that people wouldn't die? And they hid the information. There was no example of an industry not choosing to kill for money. So one question we could be asking ourselves is, looking at the behavior of the fossil fuel industry, how could you set up an economy which makes use of the great capabilities of the market system, but wouldn't devolve in that way? And, in my book, The Illusion of Choice, chapter 11, which is called Autopilot, I propose a way to do that. I think it's a good idea. I'm not saying it's the whole solution, but the market system has built this fail-safe way of entitling themselves to be ruled entirely by greed, and it works this way: the people actually making the decision, they're steering the huge, powerful ship of a corporation, will say that their one responsibility is to their shareholders, and that's something that they say. We have a fiduciary responsibility to give our shareholders as good a return on their investment as we can. That's what we're supposed to do. And then they combine this with an assumption that what their shareholders want as owners of this company is simply the maximal monetary return on their investment. There is no reason to believe that actual human beings who do invest to make money, but also who care about other things, are adequately captured by the assumption that all they care about is profit maximization to enrich themselves as shareholders. But management can do that 1-2 punch, fiduciary responsibility, and all they care about is our profit. And that means that we are required to act in a way that makes the world more broken. Because making profits can be good, but sometimes they shouldn't be made because the cost to the greater good, because we are not just actors acting for selfish reasons. Adam Smith saying we don't appeal to the altruism, but to their self-interest, the butcher and the baker. That is really very good for certain purposes, but there has to be a corrective. And the way that our corporate system of publicly traded companies works is that the corporation feels legally obligated to behave in a sociopathic way, completely consumed by greed. So what I propose as an alternative, rather than fight the idea that their obligation is to their shareholders, I have proposed a way of finding out what the shareholders really want. How much do they want to sacrifice other values to get more money? And I propose a system in which shareholders get a chance to express themselves about what they want their company to do when, let's just say, it's a baseball factory in the Dominican Republic, and there are issues about the safety of workers, and you can take a hard line and make more profit, or you can take a more compassionate line and make a smaller profit. And that's the kind of thing you can allow the shareholders to actually express what the variety of values is, rather than allow the system that's set up to deal only with dollars and cents, including that sort of tautology in which profit maximization becomes legally obligated to the management. There's a way of allowing the spectrum of human values to express itself, where they make the kinds of decisions that you and I would make in our own lives about what would we do if we had to choose between this much more enrichment of ourselves, or this much less impoverishment of ourselves, and this much love thy neighbor kind of a thing, or care about the common good. I think there's a fair amount of selfishness, but it's far from 100%. And likewise, when it comes for, are we going to kill for money? I believe that it's pretty clear to me that the fact that every industry has made the choice to kill for money, I believe that only very few individuals facing that kind of choice make a little less money, but not kill people. I think there are very few people who would actually make the decision, yeah, I'm going to pretend that what I know that's killing these people isn't true. I don't think there's very many. And so that, in my mind, if that's true, it's proof that the system is generating essentially organized powers, fossil fuel industry, for example, the tobacco industry, that are worse than our human nature would dictate. And one of the very deep themes in my work, including that, is that human nature is actually better than we have imagined. We do not have a very positive idea of human nature. And if we could get a corporate system in which our full spectrum of human values got expressed, we would have a less sick corporate system that wouldn't be the ones like would not have conducted themselves in the way that this corporate system has while fascism has been gaining in power. It's been part of the problem. And we can also see the problem in a second form, which is that even while the fossil fuel industry is acting on the basis of sociopathic self-interest, the rest of the corporate world that doesn't have that same kind of financial profit maximizing interest in avoiding confronting the need to transform our energy system so we don't keep disordering the Earth's climate system on which we depend for our survival. In spite of that, let's see, where was I going? This is not my favorite part of speaking extemporaneously. Sometimes thoughts get distracting. The corporate system behaved in an atypically evil way. And the system is what evidently determines the nature, the moral nature, or the lack of the moral nature in the industries. Because that's how they all become. How do you change this market system to require that it be act differently? I think we should generate an ethic in the society. It is not okay when American democracy is fighting for its life, getting clobbered out there with a president that doesn't give a damn about whether something's within his legal powers. And in fact, I think he's looking for opportunities to say, I will not be limited. How can it be okay for the Chamber of Commerce to be mute on this? They who have fattened themselves, and all the other industries, they have fattened themselves on this free society where science and innovation and free thought have produced this economic dynamo that has outstripped Europe a lot because of our creativity. And he's shutting down science, the CDC and NIH and NOAA. I mean, he's going a war against all the people who get to real knowledge, that don't go along with just whatever he has to say. I think we should be putting out an ethic to saying, hey, corporate America, speak up for American democracy and the rule of law. How do you get a corporate world that will behave differently in the future and not be, in many ways, an ally of this fascist force, and to take on the moral burden of being decent citizens and using their influence with Americans to say, this is really a crisis and you should side against this illegal fascistic regime. Help the American people to see what's what, because the American people would listen to if corporate America rose up and started speaking with the truth that any American who understands anything about basic American values should understand that this fascist force must be rejected. So that's part of the picture about how did America come to this. with some implications of how might we rebuild a healthy America in the political realm, and more generally too. And I'll be back to talk about some of those more generalities, that other dimensions of American civilization that have deteriorated in some way, proved inadequate to the challenge as this fascist force has been rising for 30 couple years, visibly to me anyway. So I'll be back with another episode at some point of how did America come to this? Number 3 might be a challenge to liberals, which has got to do with family structure. I don't know that I'm right about the role that changing family structure, I would say deteriorating family structure, may have played in getting us to this point. It's a hypothesis, but I think it makes some sense, and I'll be back in a number 3 in the How Did America Come to This series next time around. Thank you. Andy Schmuckler is my name. My effort to put the pieces together into an integrated picture of our whole situation as Americans and as members of the civilization-creating species is to be found on my website, where I've been working. The fruits of my labors of 55 years are to be found on abetterhumanstory.org, laid out as clearly as I can, to the very best of my ability, in a variety of different ways for anybody who might get hungry for, seeing this picture, which I find really exciting, that the human drama is really you gotta see it for what it is. This is big time stuff that we're engaged in here. Thanks. Bye-bye.